Debt. The one word that's more scary to Kenyans, right behind Obare's Instagram stories. Debt is not supposed to be a bad thing, but the current government's incessant borrowing with no end in sight is causing a lot of panic among Kenyans. With new loans piling up every day, it's only important to understand the consequences before we all have to learn the Chinese national anthem. I sat down with Fiona Okadia, an economist at the Institute of Economic Affairs, to find out more about this. Hey everyone, welcome to Fake Work Interviews. Today I have an economist with me. Her name is Fiona Okadia. She works for
Institute of Economic Affairs.
So you know she knows about money. So I'm going to be asking her a couple of questions and I hope you guys are going to learn something from it because I know I will. So Fiona, welcome to Fake Work.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so my first question is, do you think we are going to survive and repay this debt that we owe to like China, to the country and like to everyone? Like, do you think we have a fighting chance?
I think for that question, I would answer yes and no. So let me start with the no, presenting bad news first. So no, because I feel that the Jubilee government has been indisciplined with how they manage public finances in this country. So if we continue with the same trend, then definitely it will be very hard for us to check out of that situation.
Okay.
But yes, in the sense that if we move a couple of things around, then definitely we'll be able to get ourselves out of the situation. For example, we need to stop, like recently you had the government was trying to bail out KQ and also they were trying to bail out Kenya Power and all that. So I think one of the things that we need to do as a country is either to privatize some of these state-owned enterprises, because and leave it just in the hands of the private sector, so that they'll manage it better. Because clearly, government keeps bailing them out, but they keep entering the same. They still have the same issues that they've had. And then I think the second thing that I would like us to do is to be able to try and cut our budget deficit. So this means that we'll have to look at how, for example, you've allocated money in this country and cut spending. So that you can ask yourself, as a country, because we need to pay back that debt, right? And we don't want to hurt the common mwananchi by increasing taxes and all that. So do we really need a budget of 3.6 trillion? Can the country survive on less? So what are some of the sectors that we can chop off? For example, do our members of parliament need to go to a different country all the time?
Definitely not. Cancel those flights right now.
Yes. So those foreign travels, we can minimize on them or just, do away with them. Do we need to buy a pen at 1,000 shillings or 500 shillings?
What pens are this though?
Exactly. When the market value is like 20 bob for a big pen. So some of those things we have to go line by line, ministry by ministry, just looking at those things and saying, we don't need this for now, for the next 10 or so years. We don't need it, cut it, chop it, bye-bye, And then I think also that comes with the aspect that we need to curb some of these leakages. So if you look at budget formulation, that's where they start planning on how they're going to steal that money. So it's not that it's something that comes
so it's
after.
Like they budget for the steal.
Yes, exactly. That's
good. That's good planning.
Oh yeah, we plan to steal.
Exactly.
But so I think how you can decide on curbing leakages is, for example, just what we're saying about going line by line and asking yourself whether you need to spend this amount of money on a particular item. So because corruption starts at the budget formulation stage, right? So whereby when they're coming up with a budget, they decide that they're going to allocate this money, but this money is what is going to go into their pockets. So you need to come up with systems that are able to identify some of those issues and then just cut them out.
Hashtag stop the steal.
Yes.
Trump was right.
Yeah.
So my next question is like, can this debt situation turn on its head? Like we've seen countries like Puerto Rico and Zimbabwe go to like severe extremes where the debt becomes unsustainable, or like there's such increased inflation, and like it feels like the country is not even, doesn't have a plan to come back from that. So do you think we can get to a point like that?
I actually think we're already in a situation like that. It's just the severity that's different. And I'll give you a few examples, right? So if you look at, I think it was sometime this year, can't remember, I think it was either August, but it's 2021. I've lost years with COVID and all that, but it's 2021. So in August, where you have, there's debt that was due, and then government took a total of 15 billion shillings, and they decided to pay that debt. So that's unconstitutional, because our constitution says that you cannot take money to pay back debt interest. Debt interest is a recurrent expenditure. So that if you're already in a situation whereby you're borrowing from X to pay back Y, you're headed there, right? And then I think also last year, another unconstitutional thing that this government did was last year they took a whole, I think it was 70 billion, and they decided to take that money for recurrent expenditure, so from a sovereign bond. So again, we are not supposed to take money for salaries and, you know, all that recurrent expenditure whereby you pay your bills, like your water bills and all that.
Yes.
And then the third thing for me as well is the fact that we're always saying how we're managing our debt, we're going to manage our debt and all that. But even if you look at this new financial year, right, that has just begun, you find that government is going to pay about 1.2, let me break it down, right?
Yes.
So out of every 100 shillings that the common mananchi will give government as ordinary revenue, so this is tax and all that, 68 shillings will go towards debt repayment, okay? So you only remain with 32 shillings that now you can decide to build roads or equip your hospitals and all that. So because that money is very minimal for the county government to work properly or the national government to work properly. So what then will government do? They will borrow.
They will borrow,
Yes. So they will borrow again to be able to sustain now all the other functions, So you can already, so for me, I feel like we are already there. It's just that they are more there than us.
Oh my goodness.
But but we're already there based on some of these indiscipline acts, that you can see government already doing. So it's just a matter of time before now it all blows up, and then then we're in deep trouble.
So the dominoes are already falling. It's just like, when will it get to
that?
Oh my goodness. So that was very dreadful, but I think I'm not hopeful. I'm not very hopeful about this entire situation, because for it to be able to change, one of the things that we have to be able to do, considering we're going into an election year, is like get a new government that is going to take economic steps towards changing this. But what do you feel are probably the lasting consequences of this debt that we have now, and the probability of like the next government coming in and maybe not changing? Like how, like what kind of consequences are we likely to face? And if we have that and we can't change it, like is there a way like we get to fight these politicians? Because I'm ready. I've been taking like boxing classes. I'm ready.
I think if the camera was off, I would say we need to beat them. But we're not here to.
You agree, and that's all that matters.
But yes, I think one of the consequences for me that actually worries me is the exchange rate risk, right?
Yes.
So that, for example, just assume that when government was taking, when it went to the foreign markets to borrow money, they took this loan at an exchange rate of say 100 shillings to $1, right? And then the shilling depreciates against the dollar, so that now you have it, say, at even 102, just like a small amount, right? So you have it at 102. So it means that if, for example, your external debt is saving 4 trillion shillings,
yes,
and then you want to divide that by that 100 that you borrowed it, you get about, say, 0.04, right? So if you multiply that by 2, it means that there's an 80 billion or so that now you have to incur as a country, that you would not have incurred if you didn't have that debt. So you can look at it from that perspective, that there's a lot of money in billions, not in thousands, that would have maybe gone towards doing something else.
Yes.
But now, because of that exchange rate depreciation, when you look at our domestic currency, you have to pay. So then it just transfers resources from what it would have been used for to now just going back to debt. So for me, I think that's something that we need to look at. Okay, of course, the interest rates are not as bad as the domestic ones, but it's still something it's still a consequence that would worry us. And I think the second one as well is the fact that it reduces something that you call budget flexibility.
Okay.
So if you look at debt is a fast charge, right? So which means that if you get money, right? Like, let's go with what? Let's go with Fuliza, right?
Yes.
So when immediately you get that money, you have to pay your debt.
Yes.
You have to. You cannot, for Kenya, we can't say, no, we won't pay or whatever. You have to pay that debt. Yes, you have to pay it. So if you're looking at going back to our math for 100 shillings at 68, so it means that 68 shillings is already accounted for. So just forget about it completely, right? So you remain with your 32 shillings. And then another thing in this country, so you have debt that's a fast charge. Something else that's a fast charge is salaries for constitutional office holders. So you have to pay them, right? You cannot say that, now, tuko pabaya, we're not going to pay these guys. You have to pay them. So if you look at some of these fast charges, such as pensions or international subscriptions that you have to pay, you have very little money for you to be able to function well as government. Okay, so and that will be a consequence that will be there for a really long time,
so because it's like a wave that keeps coming, crashing in, destroying everything, and like receding and then coming back.
So that's, I think, in fact, I think that should be my number one. Because you'll be unable to provide services to mwananchi. So think about national security, think about health, think about education, think about some of this cash transfers for orphans. So all those things that are very important, you will be unable to do them because your fast charges and your non-discretionary payments, you have to pay them. You have, and debt, you have to pay it. So I think that's
it's a lot. I feel like I need to go to therapy after this, like just
to again borrow to try and do all these things. So at least have a few development infrastructure here and there. And then I think the third would be our rating, right? So that if you look internationally at all countries, what happens is that you have a rating. So this rating determines when you take, it determines when you're given debt, what is the period of repayment, and also it determines what is the interest rate that you're going to pay back this debt. So that if you guys have been in this situation, now you're high risk. Already we're high risk as it is today. So, and I don't think this is going to change in the next 3 or 5 years, honestly.
So we're just going to be living on the edge of the way we are now, or even worse.
Worse, because you're high risk, then it means that anyone who wants to give you money, because your rate of defaulting on this money is higher, then what they decide, okay, fine. So instead of you repaying back this loan in 10 years or 30 years or whatever,
Yeah.
you're going to repay it back in 5 years, or 3 years. And when you repay it in those 3 years, this is your interest. So that's something that will stick, which will be very bad for us, because it's back to the cycle of taking from X to pay back Y. Yeah. So those are some of the consequences. And then, of course, that means that, if the government doesn't find a solution that's working, the mwananchi would suffer, because taxes again go high, like they increase taxes, and then the cost of living again is unbearable. I'm sure already you can feel.
A lot of people are feeling. I have stopped doing certain things, like I think I'm trying to walk to more places, which is impossible if you live in this city.
But at least you're keeping fit.
Yes. Well, at least I'm gaining in one area and like completely losing my mind in so many others. So I think those would be my top 3 consequences. And unfortunately, again, they will impact the mwananchi more. So you heard it from Fiona. We are literally, we have a fighting chance, but do we though? Like, that's this entire conversation. And also, one of the things that I want to say that I found really interesting for me is when you talked about fiscal discipline. I think we were talking earlier and you told me something about fiscal discipline. Is there a way you can just explain that before I do the outro?
Okay. So for me, fiscal discipline is when, you have certain thresholds. For example, you're given, say, maybe your debt servicing compared to, as a ratio to revenue, should be a certain percentage, right? But you find that the government has exceeded that, right? And yet they know that this is when this certain indicators are what determines that this debt is sustainable. But then they go ahead and they overborrow, and these ratios are just not balancing, but yet they continue to. That's indiscipline. Like, you know what you're supposed to do, but you're not doing it. So, or for example, you know that debt is a good thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing, so you're supposed to only invest in something that will crowd in private investors and then increase your tax base, grow the economy, but yet you constantly spend it on you spend it on things that will not benefit everyone. So they only benefit a few, which goes back to state capture, but yet you would benefit the masses, or you're supposed to. So it's, for me, that's fiscal indiscipline. When they're just not paying attention to these ratios, to these percentages that they're supposed to maintain and all that. And even the other day, right, you can see that Parliament increased the debt ceiling to 9 trillion. So, and now they want to increase it again to 12 trillion. So you borrow, you increase, you borrow, you increase. So there's no really justification.
For
and is
whatever
it right?
that increase is for.
But you just keep. So for me, they're just indiscipline. That's it. They're indiscipline.
Okay. So
breathe.
I am literally I'm wrapping this up at a very stressful point. As you can see, I hope this energy doesn't transfer to you guys, because I think it's going to be a lot. But yeah, you've given us like solutions that are tangible. And if that can work, especially with the new government coming in, I think that will be amazing. So thank you guys for joining me on this edition of Fake Work Interviews. Thank you so much, Fiona, for coming.
Anytime. Thank you.